coming this morning in anticipation of your word, Lord Father God. Open our hearts to receive you, Lord, in Jesus' name.
All right. Why don't we open 1 Peter 5. This entire day will be kind of like my last hurrah, if you would. We'll be preaching the morning and the evening services. And it'll be the final day of the ministry as the official assistant pastor. Oh. Didn't expect that. I had hair, it would have done that. And so I want to leave you with this morning. And I know it's my struggle. It's got to be all of our struggles. Amen. Continuing to do something for God. And so I want to minister a few things on the topic of humility. And God helping us there in 1 Peter 5. Let's read that text real quick, 5 and 6. 1 Peter 5, 5 and 6. Likewise, you younger people, submit to your elders. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another, and be clothed with humility, for God resists the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. So here's the statement that comes from Peter, and I think he's got the ability to say this because he's lived it. And God resists the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. And I have no doubt he's saying this in light of his own failure. You remember the time after he rebuked Jesus, and then he received a rebuke from Jesus in Matthew 16:23, and he turned and said to Peter, "Well, get behind me, Satan. You're an offense to me. You're not mindful of the things of God, but of men." And so Peter has this understanding that God resists the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. And so God has a certain attraction to humility. Now Jesus said it. He said, "Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted." And then Paul said God chose the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise, and He has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things that are mighty, and the base things of the world for the things that are despised. God has chosen and the things which are not, to bring nothing to the things that are, that no flesh will glory in His presence. So God's attraction to the weak and the base qualities in people, and the reasoning would be simply that no flesh would glory in His presence. How many know God has this thing about getting the glory? And so Jesus tells a parable in the book of Luke, and He says that He spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. Two men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed within himself, "God, I thank You that I'm not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess." And the tax collector stood afar off and wouldn't even as much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beating on his breast, said, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. So God was attracted to this man's brokenness, and not to the man that promoted himself or overlooked his own failure. But when he compared himself to others, he always came out looking good. Now trust me, I've lived this sermon too many times over the years. So I'm not preaching this out of some exalted perch here. And so with these, God is speaking to us about His attraction to humility. And think about it, because Paul thought himself as the least of all the saints, but yet we think of him as the greatest. And so this is the dynamic that's at work when there's humility. But the problem is that far too often we want to be thought of as the greatest. And it's not all wickedness and horrible self-righteousness. Some of this is human nature that needs to be changed. And God did put in us to want to excel and to excel in life, but there's this tendency to want to be thought of as the greatest. And I remember early on in my salvation especially, and I was saved with a couple of different guys, and we were all contending as disciples. And crabology was alive and well. We couldn't handle the pastor giving one more attention than us, or we couldn't handle him getting the compliment over the pulpit, not us. Hello. That was me. I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about me. And David said, Lord, you have heard the desire of the humble. And so David was a man that was known to be a man after God's own heart. And this distinctive was linked to one thing. God was attracted to David's humility. Now, David made a mess of himself at times. Okay? But there was always this humility. I mean, think about the moment. We may say, yeah, but he didn't just repent on his own. Okay, well, you know, repentance comes in more ways than one. But the moment that the prophet called him out, immediately something kicked in and he was able to repent, humble himself, and begin to deal with the consequences. And so we need to be very careful not to fail in a detrimental disposition. And so we have a constant warning in the Bible that's meant to keep us in check. Proverbs 14:12, there's a way that seems right to man, but the end of it is death. Proverbs 20, verse 6, most men will proclaim each his own goodness. And 1 Corinthians 10:12, therefore let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he falls. So all of these, there's a common and consistent warning that in all of us are these tendencies that have that have a very unhealthy and dangerous view of ourselves or view of our opinions. Because left to ourselves, we're in danger of keeping inherent blind spots in our lives. And so the question somebody asked, well, how do you assess your own humility? Well, I'm not sure you can totally do it. It doesn't mean you can't identify, I've definitely grown, because I can tell you right now, I know I've grown. Does that mean that I'm totally humble? I can't assess that. So let's think about this, because pride is the default mode of human nature. And one of the things I believe that turns God off most about pride is it is non-redemptive. It's non-redemptive. And this would also stand to be true that if pride is non-redemptive, then humility is very redemptive, and therefore God would be attracted to that. Because the problem with pride is it's not about others, it's about ourselves. And I don't know if you've read very much in the Bible about how much the Bible is about others. And so this thing to understand about humility is it will be tested. Okay, so here in our text, Peter puts this in the relational arena. In verse 5, likewise you younger submit to the older. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another. Now this in itself is a whole sermon. It probably begs to be preached, the whole idea of submission, especially younger to older. That's broke down in our generation. But certainly submissive to each other, right? But think about, because we're talking about it being tested, and so it's going to be tested in the relational arena. It's going to be tested through relational conflict. How well you resolve conflict will determine how deeply humility can take root. Now, I can tell you this, that I went through a good long period of my salvation without any major conflicts with people. I was already pastoring and had pastored for a number of years. But this first big conflict, and it was a conflict with another pastor. And I won't give you any details or any thoughts or anything. There's a point I want to make. It tested me deeply. It tested who I was, my approach to this individual, approach to a lot of things about myself, But I had to battle through some stuff within me when this hit my life. And I had to come to some really hard conclusions about myself. Relational conflict will test your humility. The other area that will test it is when people fail you. When people fail you. Because this produces a revealing response, which again will determine the level of humility. Are you able to let people fail, first of all? And are you able to help people grow? Because failure is part of growing. Grow beyond their failures. Sometimes, you know, there's this nasty little part of pride that plays in, and that people's failure is a way of helping make us look better. I know, I don't like saying it because it sounds so greasy, but that's what's in us, folks. That we would look at somebody else's failure and in a sense get a little bit of glee out of it because now I look better. Especially if it's somebody you've been pointing out all along. Yeah, right? Or maybe you hold grudges on people because they failed or failed you or failed your expectations. And then the third area that's tested is when we fail, especially if our failure leaves it into the hands of others to have to redeem us. We get a revelation of others in our hearts. Now our redemption is in the hands of others. So the issue of pride is deep, but it's not beyond defining, it's not beyond understanding, it's not like something mystical. And in three particular areas that will help define pride. And the first of those is self-love. It's the old saying that they're good and they know they're good. This can be the downfall of the talented and the gifted. On the one hand, you know, it's not anybody's fault if they're talented and gifted. It's not like, you know, darn, why am I have to be talented and gifted? Because I have to deal with pride. Well, let me just deal with pride. But it's still true, they're good and they know they're good. And the other old saying is they think they're God's gift to the world. And it's the downfall of self-importance. It's what we call the prima donna syndrome. You know, we always attribute this, and it's because it manifests, it seems like the most in musicians, but it's this sense of self-worth, and the sense that, you know, you're the one that you can bring in, and you kind of got this thing going on, and it's temperamental. It's very temperamental. So Proverbs 27:2 says, "Let another man praise you, and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips." Now that's a hard one, okay? Because be careful that you don't become intoxicated with the praises of others. Be more careful that when you don't get the praise, you don't then praise yourself. And in Matthew 6:2, "Therefore, when you do a charitable deed, do not sound a trumpet before you." So Jesus is saying, keep yourself from always needing to let everyone know how much you've sacrificed, how much you gave, how dedicated you are. There's a man in the Bible, Diotrephes, and the Apostle John spoke of him and said of him, he loves to have the preeminence. In other words, he loves to be considered up here and everyone else down here, or the one that's the most well thought of. He loves to be spoken highly of, have his name mentioned, to be thought of as above others. You know, sometimes, I can't give away all of the background deals, but sometimes part of the strategy of discipleship is not giving praise. Where praise is due. Where praise is due. You know, I'm all for it, and I do it. I appreciate people, I thank people, and especially when there's, even if it's things that you'd say, oh, well, that's your job anyway. But sometimes the strategy is to withhold praise because you know what you're dealing with in a person, you're trying to help them. Because this is one of the issues of pride. that you're going to have to recognize and fight against. Think again about all the scriptures in the Bible that require loving others more than yourself and preferring others above yourself. Now that sounds great flowing off the lips of the preacher, but in practical everyday Christianity, that's tough stuff, I guess. So the second area that we can measure, or that pride is understandable, it deals with the area of blindness. Because pride has a blinding effect on our lives. And it manifests in a number of ways. In our limited experience, we view things with limited understanding, but we don't always see that. Now, the blinding of pride will promote what I call false knowledge. We can begin to judge things as right and wrong in our limitation. Through our pride, we think we know more than we do. Now, let me substantiate what I'm saying here. Because I made some of the harshest calls and judgments about people and even about other pastors during the early years of my ministry when I was far less experienced. Now, that doesn't say that all of a sudden we arrived and got all this experience, but it does help. It does help. But I remember I was just as harsh. I just saw things in my own. I thought I knew everything. Really, that's what it came down to. And I think about it. Many of the things that I once spoke about, not only do I feel a bit embarrassed about it as I was just speaking, but I've changed my tone. I've changed my tone on the way I view certain things that before I speak. You know what I mean? And again, it's part of the growing process. We're going to go through these growing periods in our life. God doesn't just smite us down. We just go through things like Peter did. But what does he say now? God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. He understands this now. Right? But pride powerfully limits true discernment because there's blindness to it. It's the element of pride that makes us very narrow with people. There's a big difference between judging something out of conviction versus blinded pride. And the truth of the matter is that our greatest problem is we just want to be right. And so when this is playing out in you, it can hinder the developing of true conviction. And the other issue of blindness revolves around our lack of seeing our own heart and our own failure. And God forbid the person that would point that out, there could be hell to pay. I remember going home many times at night, and I was just furious with myself. Because a brother or somebody or a situation kind of exposed this in my life, and it was ugly, and it was ugly. It was ugly to all that saw it. It was ugly to me. And I went home furious with myself. How can I change? Assessing our own life and need correctly. Jesus said to the Laodiceans, you say, I'm rich and have become wealthy and I have need of nothing. But Jesus' assessment was, you don't see that you're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. So there's this blindness. And the third area about pride is a contention. And I don't know any other way I've said this before. I've used this term a lot of times, but I don't know how else to describe it. But it's in black and white. It's easy to just call something right or wrong. And some things are just right or wrong. But a lot of things aren't that simple. I wish they were. And we feel pretty in control when we can call something right or wrong. Because pride likes to feel like it has a grip on things. No, that's right. What's wrong? That's right. That's wrong. And so God forbid that anyone falls into your wrong category. And Paul tries to temper this tendency in us in 1 Corinthians 8:2. If anyone thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing yet as he ought to know. And it's just this cautionary type of language that Paul would use because he knew himself. And the offspring of this can be extreme judgmentalism and legalism. And if we're not careful, we begin to call things wrong that aren't even a right and wrong issue. I don't know if you ever considered that there are things that we call wrong that are not right and wrong issues. You know, think about the Pharisees. Why do your disciples not fast? Well, that's not a right or wrong issue. But they made it a right or wrong issue. Well, why didn't they wash their hands when they ate bread? Well, that's not a right or wrong issue. But they made it a right or wrong issue. And pretty soon we start feeling empowered to start making our own set of rules and standards based upon our limited black and white vision. And you can now see why God would resist the proud and be gracious. So let's conclude here this morning. Because humility is a lifelong process. I wish I could just say A, B, C, D, and you were there. It's just a process. It's a process that has to unfold. And some of us deal with it more than others. But we all have it. And Peter speaks in the text about being clothed with humility. I want you that imagery in your head. Clothed with humility. The word clothed means to engirdle oneself, or like putting on a girdle. So I thought, well, this presents a pretty clear imagery. A girdle is often used to compress certain out-of-control elements of our body. Right? So when you're clothed in humility, humility becomes this feature in your life, like putting on a certain garment. It keeps out-of-control pride in submission. And so it's critical that we're constantly growing in this area of humility and developing true godly humility in our lives. And I have to say, your level of humility must grow with your level of ministry. In some cases, it's inevitable. And I say it's some because in some cases, we're so entrenched, we just can't seem to take input. We can't seem to see our blind spots. That's a hard one. But to the majority of cases, humility will grow with the level of ministry calling in your life, because if you're going to enter into things that if you know you need help, you know you can't accomplish, you know they're over your head, you know you need the input of others, you know you need the help of God, or you're going to fail at times, and it's an exposure, you're going to have to come to grips with this in life. So 3 things that will aid in the developing of humility in your life. First is let God's process exalt you. Let God's process exalt you. We live in the generation that exalts the individual. YouTube, Twitter, thumbs up everywhere. I like to just go to the message people that thumbs down and everyone stuff. I don't do that, but it sounds like a good idea, actually. Proverbs 25, 6 and 7. Do not exalt yourself in the presence of a king. Do not stand in the place of the great. For it is better that he say to you, come up here, than you should be put lower in the presence of the prince, whom your eyes have seen. So this is an admonishment to avoid self-promotion, and Jesus furthered that when you're invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit in the best place, lest one more honorable than you be invited by him. And he who invites you will have to come and say, would you give this place to this man? And then you with shame will take the lower place. When you're invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when he who is invited comes, he might say to you, friend, go up higher, then you will have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Let God's process exalt you. Secondly, practice servitude. This is a glaring missing element in our younger generation today. Servitude. Because everyone is jockeying for position, but Jesus made it clear, the greatest among you is he that serves. This is not selective servitude. Jesus said in Matthew 20, verse 26 through 28, "It shall not be so among you. Whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. Whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for many." And then in Luke 22:27, "For who is greater, he who sits at the table or he who serves? Is it not him who sits at the table? Yet I am among you as one who serves." And Jesus says, "Look, I'm showing you what you need to be, and that's the servant." The idea is that the one sitting at the table is the one that has position and status. He has servants. Everyone wants to be that guy. Jesus said, "I'm among you as he who serves." Who wants to be that guy? And then finally, you must practice the law of love. 1 Corinthians 13:4, "Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up." So listen to what Paul is saying here. Love is the opposite of everything that pride is. We really struggle with this because we view it as an emotional element. We view it almost as weakness. So love is the opposite of everything pride is. It's very simple. To practice love has to do with how you view and treat people. When you read that whole section in 1 Corinthians 13 on love, that's the conclusion you come to. It all has to do with how you view and treat people. You know, this is, you incorporate this into your marriage. How you view and treat your spouse. That's the law of love. And so Paul's definition of love is not an emotional one. It tells us how to act and how to react and how not to act and how not to react. And in Ephesians 4:2-3, with all lowliness and gentleness, with all lowliness and gentleness, with long suffering, lots of patience, bear one another in love. So even when correcting someone that's wrong, okay, you want to learn something? Here's a big lesson for you right here. Even when correcting, listen to Timothy, 2 Timothy 2, 24-26. "And a servant of the Lord must not quarrel, but be gentle to all, able to teach, patient, in humility, correcting those that are in opposition. If God perhaps would then grant them repentance, so that they may know the truth, and that they may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will." Now say this with me this morning. It's all about redemption.
It's all about redemption.
Okay, don't forget that. It's all about redemption, gentlemen. Okay? Even when people are in opposition, perhaps they can be brought to repentance. Now, if you have discerned any differently in your discernment, you missed the mark. This is an enterprise of redemption. The highest level of redemption, and redemption is a dirty business. It's very difficult because there's so much in us that has to change to be able to truly redeem the way God redeems. And in 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves. We must practice that, and then practice it some more until it becomes a normal part of our interaction with every type of person and personality, so that we can dispel our own pride. This is why God is attracted to humility, because it produces in us a redemptive heart for others to make sure that God receives all of the glory. God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. Peter learned that through the school of hard knocks. Amen. This is simply, and I know I've mentioned this subject in many different ways, because to me it's a very important foundational subject in Christianity, especially continuing disciples of diversity. There's nothing wrong with some good, healthy, competitive mind, wanting to excel and all that, but we must be very careful of this nasty underbelly that's within us. That really, if it's allowed to really entrench itself, it's an enemy of redemption. Because it can't redeem correctly. Humility can. It needs to be our cry, God, but it's not just a prayer. Oh God, make me humble. It doesn't work that way. You have to practice certain things. You have to give yourself to certain things, like I've already mentioned. And you have to recognize certain things. And God will help you. God will help us in this enterprise of redemption. Why don't we bow our heads? No question mark on what I'm talking about. It's something that we need to respond to, identify, and just continue to combat in our lives. There's so many other ways this can be spoken on, manifested, but I think we get the point. So why don't we take a few moments just in our chair to go on record with God. Pinpoint, identify, and go on record to practice these things that are so necessary to allow humility to become our portion in our lives. Father, we're so grateful for your word and your faithfulness, Lord, for the word of God that revealed to our very hearts. God, all have access to it. Have access within us. We do not think greater of ourselves than we should, but God, teach us to esteem others above ourselves, Lord. Let this quality of humility be deeply ingrained within us, oh God, helping us, changing us, give us the redemptive heart that you desire, God. Father, we thank you and worship you and honor you. We bless you in the name of God, you are worthy. Oh God, cleanse us and sanctify us and wash us, Lord. Renew us, my God. Oh, place within us the things that are necessary for the ability to prosper within our hearts, oh God. Help us to maintain and help you ourselves and others, God. Give us an understanding of redemption, Lord. Hallelujah, my Lord. Father, we love you in your presence. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. Oh, God, you're worthy of all praises and adoration. Hallelujah. All right, why don't we open it for a few moments for any comments or questions within the topic? If you have any conflicts and the person you have conflict with is in the room, don't mention it. Ask another question. Brother Rick.
Yeah, Pastor Glenn, what you said is very true. I dealt with it personally myself as well. I read a great quote, Muhammad Ali is reported to have said, "It is hard to be humble when you're as great as I am." And we have to realize that we're not the center of the universe. And we have to have an accurate assessment of an introspection of our weaknesses and our strengths. and that we're only a small part of the greater whole. And I came to realize, you know, that it has to be in terms of a leader, that has to be in place, and you have to, like you said, always continually check yourself and inspect yourself. And we're just a small part, a micro piece.
Yeah, we got all that. Yeah, that's so true. Amen. That's a good quote. Yes.
I know when I struggle daily, when I struggle with pride, especially in comparing myself to other people, it's true what you said. I mean, for some reason, musicians seem to struggle with this a lot, and so let's
The earning topic called Luciferian pride.
that makes sense. But whenever I find myself starting to compare myself to others and somewhere where I'm strong and another person's weak, I find that it's helpful to also look at where I'm weak and the other person's strong. Because there's always an area where you're weak and they're strong. And so when you look at, I may be stronger here, but they may be weaker here, but they're stronger in this other area where I'm weak. And so that brings the level down from putting yourself on a pedestal, because you're not better than they are. You're just stronger in a different area. God gave you a talent where they may have a different talent that you may not have. And so when you think about, oh, they're stronger than me here, maybe I can learn from them how to be stronger here.
In theory, yes.
It is hard. It's hard.
Yeah. Amen. Anybody else? Yes.
Recently come across a situation at work here, Pastor, where this gentleman is just testing me. But something came along the way where he tests my patience. Always making comments about Christianity. That's not very Christian of you. Oh, that's how they do it at the door. So from that nature, right? So rather than play into that and comment on that, I humble myself. Jesus still loves you, bro. You'll be all right. There's times when I think maybe you might go a little overboard. You know what I mean? And he's very bitter towards God, but I kind of like to shut him off and still, I don't silence myself, but I still let him know, whatever you're saying, it's not really about you telling me that you're actually saying things towards God. And that's, I think, what you have to realize. God still loves you, man. Whatever you want to do, whatever happens in your life. And in those situations, like, you can tell, like besides the bitterness that he had, that he still throw comments like that, or something about the door, or this, or tithe, always throwing a little pop shots, you know what I mean? And I'm like, Jesus loves you, bro, you know what I mean? So it doesn't. So in that sense, like as far as humility, I don't know if I'm like stepping back from situations like say something like. I was like, no, you constantly like, Jesus does love you, you know what I mean? We'll just leave it at that. But there's still all these little comments where I can tell from his bitterness or whatever that he has. I don't know if he's from the church or towards God himself, or that I wouldn't say get to me, but I'm like, kind of like, I wouldn't say like a hindrance, you might say, but in those situations, I'm like, I try not to comment to make myself look bad, you know what I mean? I'm just in the situation, I'm like, oh, he just loves you.
Yeah, God will allow people like that in our lives. It's all about redemption. It's all about redemption. God will give you wisdom to keep a redemptive heart in mind. You never know. There was a guy who would torment my soul at work. Torment me every day. We'd be winding transformers, And he had a lady next to me, and he come in Monday just trying to get under my skin. I mean, he would go at it. And, you know, fast forward, I was pastoring at the time. He was at the altar of my church, and God brought him. So you never know, it's all about redemption. Amen. Anybody else? We are almost out of time. Yeah.
I know for me, being humble can be hard sometimes, especially at work.
It's true for all of us.
So it's usually me and one guy, right? So I'm the one that's well-being, and he's the one that's helping me out. And sometimes the guy that's helping me is like, no, bro, it's better to do it this way. And me right away, I'm like, no, I'm the welder, bro. I know what I'm doing. Don't tell me nothing. So I do it the way that I think is best. Sure enough, if I would have listened to him, I wouldn't be fixing my mistakes, you know. So when that happens, it's like God opens my eyes and tells me, bro, you don't know everything.
You know what? Let me just take that, because that's such a fantastic statement. You don't know everything. And that, the more we live life, the harder it is for us to realize that. Because you live life, you do know a lot. You've been in ministry, you do know a lot, but you don't know everything. That just speaks for itself. God help us. Amen. Anybody else? You have time for one more. Brother Paul.
Yeah, so I guess when you were speaking, Glenn, I just remember there's some people in my life at different times that said, well, you seem to know everything, you know, you should tell me that. I was like, no, how am I presenting myself, you know? Yeah.
No, we have to listen. You know, people are our sounding board for who we are. Sometimes circumstances will put us in submission. We created, like you said, we create some circumstances, but we have to listen. God gave us each other. None of us are above needing to have things pointed out, corrected, or just observations that somebody can make. I mean, I used to lose the victory, man, when another brother would make an observation on how, you know, maybe, okay, I'll give you an example. This hurts really bad. But, you know, the first band early on in my Christian life, it was the worst band in the fellowship, I can tell you that. And so Adrian Prather was there. Well, if you know Adrian Prather, he's an amazing musician. So already I'm like, and so we blew it that night. At least I know we blew it. And so it was horrible. And, you know, our pastor's wife asked Adrian any constructive criticism. And it was constructive. It was 100% constructive. It had no barbs. It had no... He just went, man, I lost the victory for days. What do you call it? That stinking pride is what it was. Regardless, if you can recognize yourself as a stunk, it's pride. I lost the victory for days over this. Are you listening to me? You finally had to get over myself. So this is what I'm talking about. Okay. Amen. So let's go. Let's have a great day. God is good. We're going to stand together. And prayers at 9. Prophecy news update. And we preached on the Holy Ghost this morning. We need a Holy Ghost outpouring. Amen. That's what we're contending for. And we're going to see God move. Hallelujah. Let's worship God in dismissal. And I'm going to ask if Ricky would dismiss us. Father, we thank you for the worship.